Before all that, I want to chat about Ofsted. Are you in the teaching profession? Did you used to be a teacher? What are your views on Ofsted? Are they broadcastable? There's this kind of one-word summary, the grades given to schools. It's been quite controversial, been criticised by many in the profession, teaching union, and of course the family of Ruth Perry, who sadly took her own life after learning her primary school was being downgraded under the Ofsted system. There have been calls since for the grading to be scrapped. Well, the government's now saying it won't be scrapped, as they feel the one-word inspection judgments are outstanding and do the job. What do you think if you're in the profession? I would love to hear from you. If you want to call us, 08000 665 949. The WhatsApp's there as well, 08000 321 333. Remember to put LN at the start of your message. And if you are still in the job, maybe, you might be concerned, you want to do it confidentially. I can understand that. If you want to do it anonymously, that's fine. My email is dundas@bbc.co.uk. If you could sum up Ofsted inspections in one word, what would that word be?
Text 81333.
And there's been strong criticism of the government overnight after it said yesterday no to scrapping one-word inspection judgments such as outstanding or inadequate for schools in England. Now, as I say, the decision has been criticised by teaching unions, by those in the profession, particularly the family of Ruth Perry, who, like I said, took, sadly, her own life after learning her primary school was to be downgraded by Ofsted. Well, the Department of Education says the single-word rulings provide a succinct summary for parents and help identify which schools need support. Ruth Perry's sister, Julia Walters, is appalled.
The fact that it's taken 16 months to get here shows the resistance still within government to make the changes that everybody else can see are desperately needed. It's an insult. It's an insult to my family. It's an insult to the memory of my sister.
Chair of the committee, Conservative MP Robin Walker, has told the Commons he's sorry that the government isn't budging on the matter.
I am disappointed, however, that this morning the department appears to have gone further and ruled out changes to single-word judgments, prejudging the outcome of the consultation process and making any consideration of alternative systems academic. Ministers would be better advised, in my view, not to rule out any changes.
And it's a view shared by Labour's Shadow Education Minister, Catherine McKinnell.
The government seems to have defended the indefensible in its response. The current system is high stakes for teachers and low information for parents, and like his cross-party committee, we believe it must be reformed.
Well, the Department of Education says while it's sticking with Ofsted's overall effectiveness grade, it will continue to listen to views and look at alternative systems, including the various approaches taken internationally. Love your views on this. If you're in the profession, maybe a parent, do you go by the Ofsted guidance? If you want to give me a call, 08000 665 949. Dr. Chris Rolph was the head teacher at Monksdyke, now Louth Academy. He's now director of Nottingham Institute of Education at Nottingham Trent University, and joins me on the programme this morning. Dr. Rolph, thank you for joining us. I mean, what do you make of this current system, and what changes need to happen, do you think?
Morning, Sean. Thanks for having me. I would agree with most of the other comments that we've just heard, that the system we've got at the moment is not fit for purpose, really. I think it's offensive to say that parents are unable to read a proper report about school and they need a one word to tell them what the school's like. I think it's offensive to the hardworking staff and, in particular, leadership teams that work in those schools to sum up everything that they do in one word. And it's meaningless as well, as one of the reviews pointed out in the coroner's report after Ruth Perry's death. There's no real distinction between a school that's rated inadequate because some bits of paperwork are not in place, and another school that's rated inadequate because children are climbing the walls and people aren't teaching very well. So it's a really poor system. It doesn't provide good information, and as we've already seen, tragically, it has awful consequences for people whose work is labelled in that way. And I think what the department are doing at the moment is they're very clearly demonstrating they're not listening to the views of the sector, to parents, to families, and to the people that are involved.
I mentioned there what the Department of Education said, and it said that it would look at, various approaches taken internationally. I know you visited schools in Australia, didn't you, a couple of decades ago, and saw how it works down under.
Yeah, that makes me sound old, a couple of decades ago. But yeah, I did. I visited schools in Melbourne, and the head teachers there, they welcomed inspection. And I was really puzzled by this. And they said to me, look, this is what happens. The inspection team come in, they look at our schools, they say, here are some things you're doing really well. Here's some things that are not so good. Here are our suggestions about what you can do about those things. We'll be back in a couple of months' time, and then we'll come back again to see how you're making progress. And the schools saw inspection as a way that really helped them to improve, because they learnt from the inspection team, they learnt from those insights. What we get at the moment, all of the information, most of the information from the inspection teams is wasted. So you might have, in a big secondary school, you might have half a dozen inspectors in for a couple of days, and you just get a 4 or 5 page report. And what is happening to all of the information that those inspectors have gathered from the conversations they've had, the meetings, the lessons they've observed? Because the school doesn't get that. It just goes into a black hole. And it seems to me that that's a real waste of intelligence that the schools could use. And it'd be much more useful if that was fed back to the schools and schools could work with inspectors. 3 times I've had an inspector say to me, we're not here to give advice. And it seems to me ridiculous that we've set up a system where people can gather information but then not use that to help the people that they're inspecting. It just doesn't seem right.
And it seems a number of different suggestions have been made, and a number of different ways of doing this have been tried. You've had, graded lessons and week-long visits, no notice visits where they just show up, announcements giving you kind of 6 weeks notice. We've got this one-word grading. What out of them worked best, do you think, or what needs to happen? Is it the Australian model?
Well, certainly the Australian model would bear looking at, and there are others closer to home. The one that lots of people are talking about at the moment is in Estonia, which again is much more done in partnership with schools. And Estonia headed the PISA league tables last year, so that's why everybody wants to see what's happening in Estonia. In terms of what has happened here, I think the situation has changed. Ofsted came into being in 1992. At the time, people didn't really know what was going on in schools. And I understand the need for a regulator who can look and say billions of pounds of taxpayers' money is spent on schools, and we need to check it's been spent well. I understand that. But to summarise all of that in one word just doesn't seem appropriate. And we're not in the situation that we were end of the 1980s in terms of what's going on in schools. Things have changed radically. We now have a national curriculum. We have much higher standards than we had before. We have teacher standards, all sorts of things that contribute to much better standards in schools. And what we should be looking at is, instead of trying to say we need a 1-to-4 system so we can have a little league table and parents can choose to send their children to the best school, we should be looking to say, how do we work with every school to make sure it's as good as it can possibly be, so that every parent has a good school on its doorstep? And you'll know, Sean, there's something that works in inner cities where people can choose between the 4 schools that they can walk to from home, are not going to work in rural Lincolnshire, where parents have to put their child on a bus to the one school that the county funds transport to. They don't have any choice. And the notion that a 1-to-4 grading system enables parents to make a choice is nonsense.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Chris Rolph there was, head teacher at Monksdyke, now, of course, Louth Academy. He's now director of Nottingham Institute of Education at Nottingham Trent University. Food for thought there. What do you have to say on this? Good system as a parent? Do you think it works for you? 08000 665 949. If you'd like to text me, it's 81333. Remember to put LN at the start of your text message. BBC Radio Lincolnshire. I'm Sean Landerdale. Talking this morning, as well as exotic pets, about Ofsted and this news that single word summary judgments from the school's inspector should stay according to the government. You've been getting in touch. Thank you, Frank, for emailing dundas@bbc.co.uk saying Ofsted is not fit for purpose. Their inspections are as bad as the Care Quality Commission and their inspection of health services, says Frank. Obviously, the Care Quality Commission not here to defend themselves. Keith, and by the way, Ofsted, more than willing to come on. We've tried to get a comment from them. Keith, who's listening in the West Midlands, has emailed saying, if I had to sum up Ofsted in one word, it would be imperfect. If you've got a view on it, please do get in touch, because the idea of changing this summary was raised after the Caversham head teacher Ruth Perry took her own life after being told her school would be downgraded to inadequate because of safeguarding concerns. Her sister, Julie Waters, is appalled that the one-word system's staying.
The fact that it's taken 16 months to get here shows the resistance still within government to make the changes that everybody else can see are desperately needed. It's an insult. It's an insult to my family. It's an insult to the memory of my sister.
Well, Ken Rustidge is the branch secretary of the National Education Union here in Lincolnshire. What have members been saying to him about this latest announcement?
Yeah, well, under tremendous stress and pressure, and really, I think my members have met this judgment with dismay, across the teaching profession throughout the country and throughout the county.
Because the government says it's a way of ensuring schools are being held to account. That it's right that, they are inspected, that the children are getting the best education, but you don't think this is the way to do it?
No, I do not. The school inspection system should not cause teachers and other school staff sleepless nights, anxiety, and an urge to leave the profession. And specifically, the DfE's response to the Education Select Committee, it actually underestimates the impact of Ofsted, particularly on school leaders, on their welfare and their health. It's no good investing in counselling for leaders if we continue with a culture and approach which itself directly generates too much pressure through these unrealistic demands and narrow measures.
The government has said that they would look at alternative systems, saying there are significant benefits from having an Ofsted overall effectiveness grade. What would work for you and your members?
Well, I think to look at education over a longer time, things before Ofsted, when you had HMIs, were better. But I think, in short, the whole Ofsted system needs to be reformed. When I was at the conference at the NEU, Ruth Perry, the head teacher who tragically took her life, she spoke so passionately. And, we should not put so much pressure on head teachers and schools generally. It really is unfair.
But isn't it about making sure that children are getting the best standards at school?
Well, it could be, but I don't think the system's working. Just have a short one day or a few days inspection. That's not giving a whole view of what it's like in the school and to contextualise the school and the situation. Members are reporting to me children coming to school hungry, for one example, and they're making all the judgment on, SATs results, exam results. That's just not right.
You say obviously going in for one day doesn't work. What would, without it being too costly?
Well, I think a better system, schools working together, sharing good practice, what works well, rather than just making a one-day judgment, having people to help head teachers to share good practice, much more of that, rather than just making a judgment, which is particularly damning when you've got a one-word judgment. You go into school and it says the one thing, this school is good, outstanding, or requires improvement. How can you make just a short statement that parents make a decision on that? And what's happening when people look at these judgments? It's like a billiard table. They're running around upside and putting pressure rather than all the schools working together. What we want as a union is a good school for all children.
I think one suggestion from the government is that they may put more flesh on the bones, if you like, that as well as the one-word summary, they would highlight more detail underpinning the summary as well and why the school has got that particular grade. Would that help?
Well, I still would follow with the Education Select Committee is to get rid of the one-word judgment, to have this sort of league tables of schools, because that effectively is what you're getting. And I think it's a wider approach. We need other things to help And I could give just one example, and I'll give one example from the past. That my late mother, when the Ofsted inspector comes in, she was a primary school teacher, and they said, "Mrs. Rustidge, how many children in this class of 34 are on free school meals?" And she says, 34. And the Ofsted inspector snapped at her and said, "I don't mean the whole school, I mean just your class." And she said, "It is just my class." That's just one example that, the inspectors coming from perhaps affluent areas in the south of England and not understanding what it's like for children, in a small village in Lincolnshire.
Do you hear from members who are stressed as a result of what Ofsted have said about their school?
Yes, I think they are indeed stressed before the inspection and even more stressed afterwards and very, very disappointed. And the thing I do know is just how hard all the members in Lincolnshire, all my members, work, before Ofsted comes in, and then to come down and they're just a one-word judgment where people have made judgments, and quite often those judgments could be incorrect. And
if you were to give Ofsted a one-word summary, what would it be? Broadcaster one.
Well, to quote a school parlance, could do better.
3 words instead of the one. Ken Rustidge, Branch Secretary of the National Education Union in Lincolnshire. The Department for Education says ministers would continue to listen to views and look at alternative systems. It said there are significant benefits, though, from having an Ofsted overall effectiveness grade. If you've got a view on it, you can always get in touch. 08000 665 949. The text number 81333. Put LN.